This video is to help you combat the false rhetoric around the US economy, okay? Let's talk about the national debt for Trump and for Biden-Harris. So Trump added $8.4 trillion to our deficit, while Biden added 4.3. Here's the difference though. So let's take a look at how each administration spent their monies. So here at President Trump's side, the top of the ticket is $1.9 trillion for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This was a fully partisan decision. A single Democrat voted for it. It's also worth noting this is one of the top three spendings that he did while in office. The only thing that he did to try to offset the massive spending was the new and increased tariffs on China, which gave us $443 billion. However, the negative impact may not have been worth it. As we can see, tariffs hurt the U.S. exports and the critical jobs they support. Regulatory Chinese tariffs caused U.S. goods and services exports to China to fall nearly 12% since 2017. U.S. exports to China alone supported around 1.1 million U.S. jobs in 2017, but as tariffs stifled exports, this dropped by nearly 134,000 jobs, so jobs lost. U.S.-China trade war cost nearly 300,000 U.S. jobs from mid-2008 to mid-2019. So again, this was pre-pandemic. And two industries hit the hardest was agriculture and energy. There's also research that estimates that the trade war with China erased a total of $1.7 trillion in market capitalization for U.S. listed firms. However, when we look at Biden's spending, we see that not only did he pass record legislation with bipartisan support that not only stimulated the economy but created jobs, he also offset it with other policy. So his spending was actually over $6 trillion, but he was able to come up with nearly $2 trillion to offset that spending. And he accomplished a lot of things through these legislative decisions. For example, expanding healthcare for our veterans through the PACT Act, allowing all 50 states to either expand upon or build new infrastructure with the infrastructure bill, including my own state here in Virginia, which we have seen massive job growth and economic success because of that bill. Taking some of the student debt relief off of people so that they can spend that monies back into the economy in different ways. The American Rescue Plan, which of course pulled so many families out of the brink of poverty, as well as the addressing 3 million children that are suffering from food insecurities, and then the Inflation Reduction Act, which not only expanded Medicare and gave all Medicare participants discounted prescription drugs like $35 insulin, but also combated some of the deficit spending. Let's talk about the unemployment rate. You can see back when Obama inherited the recession from George Bush, and he started to churn that around with some really great legislation he passed to stimulate the economy and create jobs. And we see this gradually going down. You can actually see prior to 2020, it leveled off a little bit, which is probably in response to the tariffs that we discussed earlier and how we lost massive jobs. We lost steel industries overseas. We lost Harley Davidson overseas. We saw local farmers have to either go bankrupt and shutter their doors or sell off to a large farming corporation. All of that impacted job growth. And then of course, when the pandemic hit, we saw 3 million jobs go out the window overnight. Now, when Biden took office in January 2021, the economy had opened back up and we had a vaccine, so people were returning to the workforce, and we were able to recover those jobs within 14 months of his presidency. But he has continued to add jobs and lower the unemployment year over year. It's also worth noting that he saw a record low of consistent unemployment that was a 50-year historical low. Let's talk about the inflation rate. The goal typically is 2 to 3%. Obviously, we see some time frames where we got below that, but that creates the most stable economy, consumer confidence, etc. And as you can see, we're at the top end of that right now at 3%. We got even as high as almost 10 during this 2021 period. Again, this is something that Biden inherited. He did not make this go up in a single year. He hadn't passed any legislation in 2021 that could impact the economy to that effect, and he has recovered it to a level that we are confident in and what really is the goal. Let's combat the issues that people bring up. It costs too much to go to the grocery store. It costs too much to fill up my tank of gas. Housing is impossible to attain. Here's why. Let's talk about the cost of groceries, okay? Back in 2020, during the pandemic, the supply chain was disrupted. Obviously, people were not working, so these food items were not being put out en masse like they had before. But the demand was still there. We still needed food. We still needed toilet paper. We remember empty shelves. We still needed all of these things as consumers, okay? So at the time, a store like, say, Walmart recognized they were perfectly sound to uptick their prices because they had less products in stock so that they could still make about the same amount of money that they were making when they had a full supply, okay? That is literally Econ 101. When the supply is low and the demand is high, the costs go up. The problem is we have nothing in place in this country to tell stores and corporations to bring those prices back down when our economy leveled out, which it did in 2021. And as a result, say Walmart has had an annual gross profit increase year over year over year. In fact, they saw a 3.54% increase in 2022, a 2.65% increase in 2023, and they're seeing a 7.06% increase so far for 2024. So this isn't a Biden or Trump issue. This is a capitalism issue. This is a free market issue. And the reality is what we really need is a consumer protection legislation introduced that tells these corporations, hey, you can make profit, but you can't make this much profit at the behest or demise of the consumer. That's what we need. But again, this is about corporate greed. And when it comes to gas prices, it's a little more complex because with gas, that's a global market, where with groceries, it's by and large a US market. So obviously we are producing more crude oil than any other country, more than we ever have in US history. And we are outpacing our competitors, Russia and Saudi Arabia, which is huge. In fact, Saudi Arabia apparently recently said they're going to uptick their production because they're pissed we're outpacing them. The problem is we don't have a lot of refineries. We lost about 7 to 9 under Trump's administration. In fact, he was in office just after Texas sold off one of our largest refineries to Saudi Arabia. So they literally own one of our refineries right here on US soil. But we also saw some shutdown during Biden's administration as well. Now we do have 5 refineries that are in the process of being built. So, that may change the way that gas prices function, but there are wars happening abroad. There are things happening on the global scale that are impacting our gas prices. Also, there is a little hint of corporate greed. Places like Exxon and Shell and Mobil, they also have the ability to set prices and they can make record profits, and they are. So last but not least is the accessibility and affordability of housing currently. So obviously one of the biggest impacts are the mortgage interest rates, and they are pretty high. They are not controlled by, but they're impacted by the Fed, the Federal Reserve, and that is currently being ran by Jerome Powell, which was a Trump appointee. It's worth noting we're seeing an issue with inventory because of this, because we have a lot of people that are boomers or empty nesters who want to move on to a smaller home, but fiscally it just doesn't make sense, and so it leaves less inventory for new families who are looking for their first starter home. Another factor comes into play is a decision that was made by Trump's administration, specifically Ben Carson, as the head of HUD with zero policy understanding and literally a former pediatrician with no real estate expertise, and some decisions he made during Trump's administration all the way into the final hour of 2020. So this article is really great. It truly breaks down what Ben Carson did to HUD and how damaging it was with our current situation. But basically this says a return to Trump's housing policy would be a disaster. One of the biggest impacts was this executive order on deregulation and housing signed back on July 1st, 2019. So this was an Obama policy from 2015 that Trump rolled back. And basically what this policy did was it ensured that affordable homes would continue to exist, particularly in suburban America, okay? So it would make sure that basically a corporation or a hedge fund couldn't come in and buy up 30, 40, 50 houses, flip them, and then upprice them into this community, making the community as large no longer affordable to everyday Americans. It also allowed for like multi-use or multi-family generational homes or apartment complexes to be built in the vicinities of suburban neighborhoods, again, making sure that the price of these properties did not skyrocket. So that keeps people's interest rates down for their property tax. And again, it keeps it more affordable so everyday Americans can buy a starter home. After his executive order in the 2020 year, the pandemic, we saw a 12.6% increase of real estate investors buying up homes. And by the end of 2021's fourth quarter, that number was 18.4%. So long story short, these deregulations open the doors for these wealthy investors, corporate billionaires, hedge fund folks to go in and buy large swaths of property, either at a cash price or paying above the sticker price, and then flipping it, making a profit, or flipping it and using it as a rental property, and then price gouging people on rental rates. And so it creates less inventory, which means prices will naturally go up. And because of that, we are also seeing interest rates go up. Now, again, if you're wealthy, who does this benefit? This is a policy he wants to put back and expand. Every piece of legislation he's introducing is to expand the wealth gap, help his rich friends, and harm the American people. Please share this. Please have conversations. And Harris 2024. Yeah. We got this.